Morning with a good friend of mine. We were just talking before the webinar. It's hard to believe that we've known each other fast approaching 16 years, but I'm joined by Brent Pilgrim, who's one of the directors of the Beck Group. Thanks for joining me this morning, Brent.
Yeah, you bet, Stewart.
It's been probably a long time overdue that we did one of these together.
Sure.
Maybe just to get going, would you maybe give a little bit of background about what your role is at Beck and a little bit of kind of history with the relationship that you have with Beck Tech?
Yeah, sure. I started with Beck in 2001, right out of school, so this is where I've been from the beginning. I have worked in different capacities at the organization, from construction, project management out in the field on jobs, to actually came into the office to do a stint with our architecture group, learn how a set of documents is put together, worked on a couple of projects in that capacity. It was about that time that I discovered what Beck Technology was doing back in probably 2004-ish, and really got excited about what you guys were doing over there. And so as my career path started to unfold, I went ahead and jumped over to the Beck Technology organization and worked with you for, gosh, I don't know, well, up until 2016, so however many years that is, 12 or 13 years.
Yeah.
And then moved back over to Beck because I wanted to help our pre-construction team specifically get up and running with DESTINI Estimator and just be successful with DESTINI. So
Awesome. Well, I know we're going to talk today about a pretty awesome initiative you're doing at the BIM Forum. So do you want to talk about the task force that you and others are leading?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So the task force is under the umbrella of the BIM Forum. It's called Estimating and Scheduling with BIM. I'm chairing it. I'm co-chairing it with Benjamin Crosby from Yates, who's Ben. He's a great guy, rock star BIM advocate in all things BIM. So he's very knowledgeable. I'm happy to have him helping me with this effort.
He probably wouldn't like me calling him a BIM ninja, but I would definitely put him down as a BIM ninja.
Absolutely, I'd put him in that category. And we've got a lot of other ninjas coming from different backgrounds. So this is a multi-company, multi-organization, just a really broad industry effort. And so we've got some great folks on the task force and the committee that are going to be working together. But I'll give you some background on what it is. So
yeah,
you know my background with DESTINI Profile. I've got 14 years at least of doing conceptual estimating with what I would call a true 5D platform.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not about profile at all, but it does help to give that kind of foundational knowledge. So in 2017, 2018, we were starting to work with Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech, for those who don't know, is a very progressive, tech-savvy owner who, being a university, they have their own design and construction group, and they're very tech-savvy. They're very progressive in terms of what the industry is pursuing. And so they were pursuing a project under this umbrella called 5D, or what they called virtual planning, design, and construction. So they wanted this very highly connected BIM-based project to go forward. And just to not to spend too much time on that job, but just real quickly, the strategy itself didn't fail, but I would say as a team, we fell short of what the ideal was that Georgia Tech had set forth. So they did set the bar really, really high. And we learned a lot of things from that. We started out the job doing the right things. We created a BIM execution plan as an organization, as a project team, and we set strategy and all that. We had a competent design team. We had a competent contractor and certainly a competent owner. But again, we kind of fell short in my mind of what the expectation was for that ideal virtual planning, design, and construction process was. So as we went through that project, I was thinking the whole time, like, why is this so hard? Why is this not coming together as I would expect it to be? And I took away kind of two things. One is there was no real clear definition from the design team's perspective of what would be estimated from the contractor side using the model. And then from the contractor side, there was no clear definition how the design team would model objects so that they could be quantified for estimating purposes. So even though we went through the traditional strategy and BIM execution planning, there was still this gap. And I think in the end, it's as if we were expecting the technology really to magically fill the gaps, connect the dots, and make it all work, right? And you and I both know you can't just rely on the technology to make it all happen. So I was frustrated in this process. With my 14 years of experience with Profiler, my experience told me this is completely possible, but we were missing something, and something was preventing us from really being able to make this a scalable, widely successful workflow that the industry could be using. So with that in mind, I kind of went to the whiteboard and started thinking in my mind, like, what do we have to do to make this possible? And one of the things that boiled up out of that process was, okay, there's definitely a difference between what the industry calls model-based estimating and what I would call 5D. And I know that's kind of a kitschy term, and some people cringe when you say 4D and 5D because I get it. But for right now, it's the best term to describe.
I saw a thing on LinkedIn. I saw a thing on LinkedIn just last week that was 7D and 8D, and I'm like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, and I get that. I get that there's a little cringeworthiness associated with that term. But my goal was to say, look, guys, look, industry, there's model-based estimating, which is what I would consider an incrementally based process improvement. And then there's 5D, which is really just leapfrogging style innovation, right? I mean, 5D has the potential to really push our industry way forward. And we all stand to benefit from it. I mean, we as estimators would benefit from the efficiencies that come from 5D. The owner would benefit from the process. The design team would benefit from it. So there's a lot to gain if we can set that bar, just like Georgia Tech did, set that bar really high. This is what we're defining, and this is what we're trying to achieve. And you know, can I show you a slide that?
Oh, you betcha. You betcha. Let me make you the.
Kind of define this, yeah.
Yeah, let me make you the presenter.
While you're doing that, I'll just go ahead and say, you know, there are obviously groups out there in the industry that I would call pockets of innovation, right? And there are groups that are doing really well with model-based estimating. They've been doing well for years. You and I remember the product Innovia back in 2008, and some people just really latched onto that and did really well. And but to kind of create some distinction between model-based estimating and 5D, I've created these two simple slides, and these aren't perfect, but hopefully they do start to kind of illustrate why I see the difference and why that's so foundational for this initiative and what we're doing going forward. So what I would describe model-based estimating as is a process that really takes a model and extracts quantities from it. It's very simple, right? I mean, that's it. You're taking quantities from a model. The quantities are model-based. What we see across the industry with these teams that are doing this is kind of this ad hoc process. They're taking whatever model they can get and getting whatever they can from it. There's no real strategy that says, for this scope of work we're going to do this, for this scope of work we're going to do this, and so forth and so on. And so that's why I call it kind of an ad hoc harvesting strategy. The other key features of it is that it's a manual process, right? We're going in and we may be using a tool like BIM 360 or a tool like Assemble or other tools to just manually extract whatever quantities we can from that model. And then in doing that, we're manually applying these are specified parameters, right? This kind of this metadata that helps us quantify the job.
Yeah.
We're not linking costs. We're not linking costs to an estimate. There's no live connection, and there's certainly no automation involved in that. So, you know, you've got, again, this slide doesn't really illustrate it perfectly, but it's kind of my best attempt. You've got these model-based tools, model authoring tools, and you've got these estimating tools that they have their own strengths and they do different things well, and they do things that other tools don't do. So let's just contrast that for a second with this ideal form called 5D, if you want to call it that. And I see there being really 5 key characteristics of a 5D process. And just right off the bat, there's no software platform that's going to solve this. There's no single standard that's going to solve this. And there's no thing that just the design team or the estimating team can do to solve this. Really, it is an integrated solution in every way, shape, and form. But real quick, the 5 things, because this is important. There's this idea that model objects are intentionally authored, right? When I, the design team, or I, the contractor, whoever's authoring the object, there's this intentional, I'm creating this so that it can be quantified down the road, or estimated or scheduled, or something else is going to happen with that object. I'm not just creating this model object for the purposes of conveying design information.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that the objects that I have spent time intentionally modeling are quantifiable and qualifiable. So I can pull quantities from them, but I can also extract qualifiable information, right? Maybe the PSI of the concrete, or I mean, there's a host of other information that could be embedded in that object that's not geometry-based information. The third idea is that I've got to be able to integrate or link cost to the estimate, right? So I've got this model and I've got this estimate. There needs to be a connection between the two. It's not a manual application of quantities from the model and plugged into my estimate. So that's really key. The fourth thing is that I'm not doing this in an ad hoc way. I am actually applying some standard that is accepted by the industry, whether I'm at Beck or whether I'm at any of the other companies out there. I'm pointing to this industry standard that says this is how we do this. And then the last thing is, yes, there is a software component associated with this. And it's this idea that we've got to be able to automate this process to some degree. Or again, it's just incremental improvement. In order to really leapfrog this industry, we're going to have to start getting into true automation. And so in order to do that, you're going to need some level of software, right? I'm going to stop sharing my screen right there.
Yeah. So Brent, on you know, by all means continue, but a quick question. So, you know, is the task force specific to a particular vertical, or is it more industry wide? And it's going to work for industrial and oil and gas and mining and da 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 da. Yeah,
great question. So the idea was, after I had all this kind of frustration 2 years ago and have been working through how could we solve this, I looked, ironically, I kind of just stumbled back upon BIM Forum's LOD specification. I said, hey, you know, really and truly, what industry standards out there exist that we could point to? And not everybody uses it, but you'll be surprised if you haven't dealt with the BIM Forum lately. You'd be surprised how many companies have adopted the LOD specification as an industry standard. We can point to it that say, generally speaking, the industry accepts this, and it provides the guidelines for what we're going to model for different scopes of work, right? And so I looked at that and I said, okay, that's probably a great starting point. And what if we use that as a starting point and then added or amended it with model-based estimating guidelines, right? When you design a building and you're modeling a grade beam, what do I need to have from that grade beam in terms of LOD, LOI, so that I can estimate it? So to answer your question specifically, we're looking at the commercial market sector because primarily that's what the BIM Forum LOD specification is focused on. And this isn't going to be, you know, we've got a long 9 months ahead of us. Just to quickly kind of finish up on the task force idea, I met with Will Eichert about a year ago, actually, and he connected me to Ben. Ben and I spent some time in the spring kind of kicking this idea around, and then we launched the task force at the BIM Forum conference back in St. Louis in September. And that was when we really said, hey, industry, this is something we'd like to do. Let us know if you're interested. And then over the last couple of months, we've been working to get those people who are interested in working on this committee together. And we actually had our official kickoff back at the beginning of November. So we got a long 9 months ahead of us, and we got a lot of work. We don't expect to really solve this in its entirety. I mean, if you know the BIM Forum's LOD spec, that's been in progress since like 2011 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a work in progress.
Another one is it'll never be done. You just keep iterating and making it better and better over time with more and more input.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that.
So I mean, what you mentioned 9 months. Why 9 months, and what do you hope to accomplish at the end of the 9 months?
Well, 9 months is a little bit arbitrary. I'm assuming that the next BIM Forum conference will be again in September. That date's obviously going to be subject to change. But what we'd love to do is the task force group that has been assembled, we'd like to put something together. We'd like to put a working product together that we can present and start to get public feedback, because in January of 2021, January of every year, the LOD spec goes out for public comment. And that's where we really get to kick the tires and see what the public, who hasn't been heads down on this, we get to see how they're receiving that information and then get their feedback on it.
Yeah,
that's the idea.
And who? I mean, you mentioned some names of obviously people that we both know. Are there others that are participating? Are you looking for others to participate at this phase? How's that working?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for more people just to broaden the perspective. We've got contractors, we've got some design team members, some architects. We've even got some trade folks that are involved in it as well. So anybody can get involved. And then there's really kind of three levels of involvement, right? I mean, we're going to break up the BIM Forum spec into basically scopes of work, just like it's currently broken up, and create some task force teams, some subgroups that are going to focus on those tasks. So at a high level, we need people who can champion a scope of work, right? And then just a level below that, and that's probably the highest level commitment in terms of if you really want to roll your sleeves up and get involved, that's going to take some time. The level below that would be, I'm going to be a part of a subgroup in the committee, and I'm going to help contribute to the work product itself. And then the third tier would be the least hands-on, but still very critical. Hey, when we put together a work product and put it out there, we need your feedback as an industry member who's interested in seeing this succeed. Give us feedback. Where do you see it work? Where do you see it not work? What are the holes? Where are our blind spots? And just help us really kind of hone that work product.
You know, it's funny when you go back and you think about things that you've seen and heard. I remember, I think you were there in San Francisco about 4 or 5 years ago when Advancing Pre-Construction Estimating Conference started. I remember sitting in on a presentation from Todd Fisk at Alberici, and he was describing how he utilizes, models for pre-construction. And I thought
Sure.
What you just said lines up exactly with what I think he said, which was ask for what you want out of the model on day one, and then ask for what you want at different phases. If you ask, you're likely going to get. If you don't ask, you're likely to get what they think you're going to get, and you're almost guaranteed that they won't give you what you want. So it sounds like I get it's complicated, it's hard to do, but the idea seems pretty simple. Ask for the right information at the right time and define it. Is that high level what you guys are trying to do?
Well, it's super high level. Yeah, that is it. And there's layers of complexity underneath that.
Sure.
Probably the biggest layer of complexity is asking the estimating industry as a whole to come up with a singular standard for estimating, right?
Yeah.
And that's no easy task in and of itself. But we do have other standards that we're going to look at and lean on. I mean, by all means, we're not just looking at the LOD spec, but the LOD spec is going to become the carrier pigeon, if you want to call it that, to deliver the message, because it makes the most sense to align with model content. But part of the value of having a broad team of committee members is that we do have some passionate estimators who have been working with estimating standards that have been published for years, and we want to bring that into the mix and make sure, certainly, that we're not starting from scratch, but where it makes sense to lean on an existing standard, roll that into the equation.
So who I mean, big picture, who do you think is going to benefit from this initiative the most, and maybe when?
Well, so two things. I think out of this initiative, I hope two things come. One is a clearer definition of model-based estimating in 5D, so that when we have owners like Georgia Tech say, hey, I'm looking for a 5D process, the industry knows what they're asking for, right? We say what we mean and we mean what we say. And if we have teams out there that are hearing this webinar going, hey, we've been doing model-based estimating for years. I don't know where you're at. I get that. You're one of the top tier contractors or teams or BIM ninjas that are doing this really well. But my point is that you're not doing it in a way that has been scalable. Otherwise, the industry would have adopted this 10 years ago, and we'd all be doing it, and we'd all be benefiting from it. So the first thing is, out of this initiative, we want to define the difference between model-based estimating and 5D, and just clarify what each of those mean. They both provide value. The second thing is, out of this initiative, is we hope to have a standard that can accompany, it can sit adjacent to, or it can be integrated with the BIM Forum LOD spec. If all that happens, then who's going to benefit from this? I think we all stand to benefit from it. I think As estimators and as contractors, we're going to be able to advance this idea of model-based estimating much more easily because we can all point to something and go, this is how the industry is expecting it to get done. Our architecture friends are going to be able to benefit from it because they're no longer trying to please 5 different contractors when they say, we want to do model-based estimating and this is how it needs to get done. And then certainly our owners are going to benefit from it because if we succeed with model-based estimating and we can advance to 5D, well, I mean, hopefully it's obvious where we all stand to benefit from a true 5D process. So, and I'm open to other terms too. If you got a better word than 5D, let me have it. So.
Yeah, we'll leave that for another day. No, that makes sense. I mean, you know, high level again, but it very much feels like if the contractor is involved very early, this fits. So do you also think this will help promote integrated or collaborative design and construction? Do you think they kind of go hand in hand? If there's a process for leveraging architectural content to give more insight on cost early, does it help promote design build, more negotiated, more kind of CM type collaboration?
Yeah, sure. A company like Beck that's integrated, and there's other firms out there that are integrated, we stand to benefit probably faster or more immediately from this, simply because we're one and the same, and the conversation ought to be a little bit easier, right?
Sure.
But if we can prove that it can be done in an integrated way, then it should be able to be done elsewhere. We should be able to write the rules, so to speak, that would help everybody succeed at this. So
yeah, agreed. Okay, so then how does this fit into the overall larger conversation in the industry about adopting technology? Where do the technology vendors, where do we fit in?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I inadvertently left that out of the conversation earlier when I was describing this process, but
you're keeping us out? Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
No, the vendors are certainly welcome to join the committee, and we've got a task force initiative that's been written to help us all kind of understand what the goal is, and maybe we can publish that. I mean, it's been published to the BIM Forum, but maybe it can be published in a wider group. But the idea is that you and I know this with Profiler and with Estimator, the vendors have done a great job over the last 10 or 15 years of pulling the industry in a direction where we all know we need to be going, but they've been pulling us. We've been pulling us, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And what happens with that is it's a little bit of a one-sided equation, right? We know what we want to do. We know about AI. We know about predictive analytics. We know about automation. But it's going to be difficult for us to get there if we're not riding alongside with our contractor friends or estimating the user group, right? And so our goal with the initiative is to say, hey, vendors, you're welcome to participate in this committee. Our hope, though, is that when we're done with this, we come up with a specification or a standard that you guys can all latch onto and go, okay, this is how they want to do it. Now let us build the functionality that helps them achieve this, rather than let's build the functionality and hope they adopt it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, very, very much. It's always felt a little bit like a chicken and the egg, which comes first. And I think, and obviously I'm on the vendor side, but I felt very much like you said that I think vendors are trying to pull. This feels a little bit like push, and a little bit of push and pull I think is good for the industry. So completely.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm any of the vendors, I'd love to be able to have something to point to and go, oh, this is what they need, this is what they're looking for. So
yeah, I think we're all looking for ways to bring more value to our customers. And there's only so much you can do with technology. I think, I know right. You believe this, and I believe this. Technology is a tool, and no matter how good the tool is, it's not a silver bullet. And you need process, right. And you need data. And it seems like you're defining what data you need at what point in the process. So to me, it makes total sense. So
right.
Well, we are. We thought this would be a 15-minute conversation, as is usual with you and I. We went a little bit longer, but genuinely want to thank you for your time today. Is there anything in closing that you would like to say to those online?
If you want to get involved, certainly you can reach out to me. I've got a LinkedIn post out there that kind of hints at what we're doing. You can tag that or whatever you want to do. Just get in touch with me. Let me know you're interested. You heard me talk about the 3 levels of involvement. Just here's your opportunity to influence where the industry is going, and I really expect this to be successful. So it'd be a great time to get involved.
I'll commit to you too. I mean, you know this. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I think we'll commit that we'll do another one of these maybe as you make progress with the task force.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get you some momentum. So thanks again for joining me today. For those that are online, we're going to post this probably later today, tomorrow morning at the latest online. Please distribute it to others. This is definitely a great initiative that is very near and dear, I'm sure, to all those online. Next webinar that we have is a Feature of the Month webinar around setting up Power BI cost history and comparison dashboards. It's on 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, December the 18th. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining me. And again, Brent, thanks very much for all that you do for us and the industry at large. And thanks for joining me this morning.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.